Hello, good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you on this Wow Kids Talk Show. Friends and dear parent, it has been our continuous endeavor to keep our knowledge up to date, not only on what's happening in early childhood education in our country, but also gather as much as information from across the globe. We are taking this opportunity to connect to various speakers, experts, early childhood educators from all over the world and have them share their knowledge and wisdom with us. Today, we have Lisa Baker from Australia with us. Lisa has 30 years of experience in early childhood education as an educator and is also a researcher. Hello, Lisa. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's a pleasure to have you with us on Wow Kids. So, Lisa, tell us something about yourself and your journey as an early childhood educator. For 30 years, and I'm amazed. And as you were talking, that those your students now, their children are being taught by you. So that's you seeing the second generation of the same, uh, you know, your students. So that's amazing. Tell us something
That
about yourself and your life as an early childhood educator.
Thank you. Well, as you said, I have been an early childhood educator for 30 years. So I guess at my very heart and my very core, I am an early childhood educator and absolutely love the time that I get to spend with children. The children that I teach at the moment are 3 and 4 years old. So I have a class of 20 children, 3 and 4 year olds, and I spend part of my week with them. That is the first half of my week is in the classroom with those children. And as you said, some of those children are being brought in by children that I taught 25 years ago. I guess when I started as an early childhood teacher, a kindergarten teacher, all those years ago, I didn't necessarily know that I would still be here. But it is such an amazing privilege to work with young children and so incredible to see their development and their growth and to be a part of that, that I still really, really enjoy that. The second half of my week, though, I guess I'm now moving beyond the classroom. I'm studying, so I have recently completed a master's in applied positive psychology, so looking at the science of well-being. And I'm particularly focused in my research methodology study and future studies, looking at bringing ways that well-being can be enhanced for young children in those early years of their life. So I'm studying and working at Melbourne University, and I also have some other areas that I work in outside of my classroom, helping teachers to understand their well-being and looking at ways we can improve learning, development and well-being for young children. So everything I do is about those amazing years from sort of 3 to 5, and whether I'm actually in the room with the children and reading them a story, or whether I'm on a webinar or something like this and talking about children, I certainly love to do that, and I can see myself doing that for a long time into the future in some capacity.
That's great. So 30 years of teaching and learning and still learning, I will say. That's
Yes,
amazing.
I'm,
I
I'm
think
still a
that's
student and
that's
will
the
continue to
real
be a student.
passion that really talks about that how important is this subject matter for you, early childhood education. uh, you know so Lisa, tell us something that the kindergartens didn't close in Australia during the lockdown, as they were part of essential services. What changes happened in the daily overall operations,
Well, a
which
lot of change. Yep. A
yeah,
lot of
carry on.
change, obviously. But I guess it's important that I just clarify that in Australia we have several states and territories,
Yeah.
and each of those states and territories have been affected differently by the pandemic in regards to the number of cases and what level of shutdown they have gone to. So I'll be able to talk from my experience in the state that I'm in. But when I knew I was coming to speak with you, I did also take some time to contact educators outside of my state. So I have some perspectives from people, all around Australia. but depending on what state or territory you are in, depend on the level of lockdown that you went into. So the state that I am in is in Victoria. And so we had the initial lockdown in March when across Australia, services and businesses were locked down. But at that time, the federal government in Australia declared early childhood education and early childhood educators essential workers. So our services, our kindergartens, our preschools, childcare, daycare remained open. A lot of families did choose to keep their children at home and to self-isolate. And that certainly happened in the service that I work in. Only about 20% of families initially continued to come. So the vast majority of families were self-isolating. So what we were doing at that particular time, several months ago, was offering a dual platform. So classes with educators in the service for families who were bringing their children, and then also online classes for children and families who were staying at home. So that happened for quite some time in the initial lockdown in March, and then that was lifted and services went back to normal in a sense, with all of the changes, of course, that I will talk about. But the state that I'm in at the moment, Victoria, we've gone back into lockdown again, and with even harsher restrictions in some parts of the state. So in some parts of Victoria, in our capital city in Melbourne, some services have completely closed, and others are only allowing workers who have a certification from the government that they're allowed to send their children. So it's quite different depending on what part of the country or the state that you're in.
All right.
But in regards to what's happened on a daily basis, what changes have happened for us as educators and for the families and children coming in, when I thought about that, I guess I initially thought, there haven't been too many changes, a bit more hand washing. But then I started to stop and think, and I wrote down all the changes that have come into place in the last 6 months, and it has been quite significant. I guess we're adapting to those changes quite quickly, and as you said, it becomes the new normal. So we certainly have a lot more risk mitigation strategies in place. So things that people would recognise from hand sanitising at the front door, stations where children and parents sanitise their hands. Lots more hand washing going on in the programs. So we're getting the children to wash their hands sometimes every hour. We have developed songs. We've got hand washing songs now. So we're quite good at singing a song while the children wash their hands. In my service, we're fortunate to have a cleaner who comes in, who is there all day and is washing surfaces all the time. In regards to what's happening for parents, they're now no longer allowed to come into the room, so they have to drop their children off at the door, which is really quite different for us because in early childhood we're welcoming parents in and work in partnership with parents and want parents to know what's going on and feel a part of the program. But now that's quite different. It's parents dropping children at the door, and we're keeping that physical distance, so 1.5 metres apart, and it's quite a quick drop off because we don't want people to be in the space for very long. And I do know that some services in other parts of the state that I'm in are having parents drop children at the front gate, so the parents don't even enter the building at all. They have staff out the front who are then taking children into the building. So that's quite different for us. In the state that I'm in at the moment, it's mandatory mask wearing. So every time you leave the house, you must wear a mask. As early childhood educators, we don't have to wear a mask when we're with children, when we're teaching, but many of us are choosing to wear a mask or to wear a face screen. Particularly when we are speaking with parents, we're making sure that we have masks on. So I guess a lot of risk mitigation strategies, we take the children's temperature every morning when they enter the building. Parents have to sign a declaration to say that their children don't have any symptoms, and that if they do present with symptoms during the day, we can phone the parents and they will have to come and collect them. A lot more washing of the toys. So we're always washing things, and we're not putting as many toys or provisions out for the children either, because just the sheer amount of washing that would take, things are quite stripped back, I guess, in a sense. The rooms are simpler, so that where there's less around, I guess, possible surfaces for contagion. So that's taken up a lot of our mind, I guess, before we started going back into the programs. What was the risk mitigation strategies? But then there's also impacts for parents too, that they don't get to see us as much or communicate with us as much. So we're certainly utilising online platforms for that. Our parent-teacher meetings were conducted online, and as
How, how
educators,
frequently are you doing this parent-teacher meeting with the parents?
it depends a bit on the individual family. So at the end of last term, we had a structured interview with every parent. And then it depends on whether we are able to see parents and have that sort of casual conversation, or whether we're not seeing them at all, because there are some families now who are self-isolating again. So we will phone them. I've phoned families this week to check in how they are, and also then to see how often they would like me to check in with them. So it's a little bit flexible in the sense to what families need, because obviously if families are isolating at home, they are trying to work from home, parent from home, be the teacher at home. They have other children at home who are doing remote school. In Victoria now, schools are closed, so families have older children at home. So we're trying to be sensitive to all of the things that parents are trying to do and not overwhelm them as well. So it does depend a bit.
It,
There are other. Did you want me to talk about some of the other things that have impacted our day-to-day
yes,
operation?
why not? Please tell
Yeah,
us.
yeah. I guess for us as colleagues, we are not getting to spend as much time together. In the service that I work in, there are 30 early childhood educators, and we would have lots of meetings. We would be sitting down together at the end of the day and talking about the children, talking about the curriculum, planning, documenting. Well, we're not doing that as much anymore now, because we're not supposed to be together.
Together.
And for educators who have time to be planning and documenting, we're now doing that from home. So for me today, I was at home working on the planning side of the program, whereas previously I would have been, at work doing that. So lots of us working from home in different ways. And that means that we're not as connected as we were. Our group meetings, where once a month we would come together in the evening as a team and have dinner and have a meeting for a few hours, that's now done online. So I'm seeing my colleagues as little pictures on the computer screen.
Yes,
So that's different.
I know. I
And
can very well understand what everybody, but I think that's important for the safety of everyone. I think so. That's very, very important. So, how did the children embrace? Because they would have been seeing you in the masks and shields. You know, so
yes,
what? How did they change? How did you manage to see there are things which have changed suddenly for them because they were
yes.
not
So
used to seeing you. So yeah,
I think we are lucky in Australia that our academic year started at the end of January or early February. So
right.
for a lot of kindergartens and preschools and early childhood services, we went in as normal. We didn't know about this at the start of the year. So I had 8 weeks with my children, meeting my new children in my classroom and seeing them every day, all day, every day. So we had a good amount of time to just develop a relationship with the children, for them to know us and us to know them, and spending time with the parents. We had met all of the parents last year for individual interviews. And as I said, some of the parents I know from years ago, and many of the children I know because I've taught their brothers and sisters before. So we had quite strong relationships with the children before all of this started to impact us. So I think that helped. And we had the opportunity before masks were made mandatory, that I was able to talk to the children about masks. So I had the children sitting down in small groups, because that's another thing that has changed. We don't have a group time or a circle time with all of the children at once, because they're too close together for a long period of time. So just take 3 or 4 children together and then repeat that. So I sat down with my children and I showed them a mask and just said to them, do you know what this is? And spoke to them about that. And I wrote down all of the things that the children said. And some of them had very clear ideas. Even some of the 3-year-olds were really, they knew what it was. I did write some of this down. Some of the children, children said, it's a mask, it's for the germs. Another child said, germs go on your hands. You wash your hands and you use soap, and when we eat, we don't get germs. So the children had a good idea about masks. One of them told me, masks help us stop the coughers and from people getting germs and the coronavirus. So it depended a bit on what families had already spoken to the children about.
Yes, yes.
So I did.
And
I
how
showed
much
them.
news is the family watching? That also, of course.
Yes,
People,
yeah, and
their
some.
children are watching, where the parents are watching more news of and seeing the coffins. Definitely, the child will talk about it, I'm sure.
Mm. And I think it does depend too if children have got older brothers and sisters in the
Yes.
family, because they would be talking about them too. So I guess the way I helped the children with that was to talk to them about it beforehand and hear some of their understanding and some of their theories about what is happening, and then spoke to them about what we might be doing. I've also made sure that my masks are fun. So here's one
Oh,
of
wow.
my Australian waffle
Yes,
masks.
yes, yes.
I
Now,
have got.
now there's so many. I see a lot of sellers having those Mickey Mouse and other cartoons on the mask. So, yeah, that's another
Yes,
way to excite them.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
this is
And
children.
another.
Children were not wearing a mask, right? They're
No,
not, no, because they're
in
too small.
Australia, children under 12 don't have to wear a mask. Some of
Yes.
my children have brought in masks, but I
Okay.
think they're a little bit excited. They see their parents wearing masks and they say, can I have one too?
Okay.
And parents have made them ones with beautiful material. So some children
Yeah.
have brought masks in, and of course they think that they're superheroes, but they don't leave them on for long. But
Right.
the other thing that we have the option of wearing too in my service is a face shield. So
Face
before
shield.
I started wearing a face shield, I got the children to help me decorate it. So this is my.
Okay. Wow.
They're
Yes.
very
Yes. Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
The children stuck those
Beautiful.
all on for me. Um,
Amazing. So
so I
actually, so even this change, you can actually plan and make it, as an activity, and let them include this, so that they
yes,
are a part of it
and I.
and they understand that this new change is going to and here to stay. So let's decorate our masks and let's decorate
Yes,
our face shields.
yeah.
Amazing. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think children take their lead from us. If myself, as an early childhood educator, I was showing that I was afraid of masks or that I felt masks were difficult, or then the children would perhaps feel that way too. But I've just spoken about it, the fact that there are more germs in the world at the moment, and we want to be safe, so we're going to wear our masks. And then when the face shields came in, I said I need some help to do this. So I think they do listen to what we're saying, and they also watch how we look, and they
Yeah.
can pick up on how we feel. So I think it's important for us as adults to be calm and clear and just explain simply, and to get them involved and to listen to them. And
Yes.
that's certainly one thing that we talked about as early childhood educators before this came in. What would our approach be in each of our classrooms to help the children understand this? And it
Yeah.
depended a bit on what the children were telling us. In my class at that time, none of the children mentioned coronavirus at all. And
All right.
so we decided that myself and my co-educator, that we wouldn't talk about it either, because it clearly, we felt that perhaps the room that we had and the space that we were offering might have been one of the only places in the children's lives that wasn't impacted so much by coronavirus, despite the fact the more hand washing and staying apart and those sort of things, the children could still play, they could still be together. And we didn't want to start talking about it and have them, if they weren't talking about it first. So we've certainly taken our lead from the children. We've listened to them and listened to what they're saying and listened to their questions. And then just our response has come from them.
Right. Amazing. I think so. Did you see any impact on children uh, of the news that parents are watching? Should they be there, or parents should completely avoid them watching the news? What is your view on that? Because I'm sure too, we live in small apartments where we have one television at home, and a lot of times we are prompted to watch television, and children are around. Is that a good thing, or we have to restrict the information? What are your views? Because you've been already teaching during the pandemic, and your children have been coming. So, what are your views on that?
Well, do you know what? I think all of us should watch less news. I think the news is quite negative and alarming. And I think that the news reports do that on purpose because of the negativity bias that we all have. Psychologically, we are
Absolutely.
tuned in to listen to what is negative. And so the news does that on purpose. And
Yeah.
as personally, I have restricted the amount of news that I watch because it is quite fearful and negative. And so I certainly think that children shouldn't be watching the news, young children, children who are 3 or
Totally.
4 or 5, because the news is not aimed at them. It's aimed at adults, and it's
Yeah.
aimed to alarm adults. So I think as much as possible, we shouldn't have children watching the news. They don't have the cognitive ability or the life experience or the emotional or psychological flexibility to take in that information and to process that. I think it can create fear. That doesn't mean that children won't hear things or see things, but as adults, it's up to us to filter that for children and to find out what it is they know and help them to understand that. So, wherever possible, I would not have children watching the news. Turn it off and read a book instead.
Absolutely. I copy that absolutely. So it's too much of information that those days, and I see a tremendous amount of repetition. There's nothing, it's not making any sense now to keep watching the same thing over and over again.
Mm,
So you might as well read a book, or maybe if you really want to spend time rather than spend time on watching something else. Anyways, so when this coronavirus was announced that there is a virus and countries are going in a lockdown,
mm,
uh, you were still continuing, your parents were continuing to send their children to your school. What was the parents' reaction? Because I'm sure there would be some kind of uh, how anxiety in parents also, or that
mm,
might we might is it right, or is it wrong? Will you take care of the child the way it has been? How will my child not get that virus? So what was the parents reaction during the time
mm.
when the news had already started spreading and the virus also had started spreading, but the children were continuing? So
I think because I'm in Victoria and we had the initial uh, impact when services stayed open, but many parents were choosing to stay at home, and then we more and more families started to come as the numbers went down, and then we've now had a rise in numbers and we've gone back into lockdown. I've seen the difference between how parents felt at the start, and also how educators felt at the start, and how we feel now. And
yeah,
I guess at the start, there's certainly in March, there was some fear and some anxiety. We didn't know much about what was happening, and we were receiving a lot of information and a lot of updates very quickly, some confusion. So in March, certainly the vast majority of parents did choose to keep their children at home,
oh,
and the ones who were sending their children were because they really needed to. They were health workers or emergency service workers themselves who needed, and we needed them to be working. But then, as parents saw what we were doing, all the risk mitigation strategies that we were putting in place, how we were taking it very seriously, and we communicated a lot to parents about what we were doing to
yes,
stay safe, about how we were following the guidelines of the chief medical officer and the guidelines of the government. They saw actual physical things happening in regards to the hand sanitizing, temperature taking. The rooms looked a bit different because we took away some of the toys, so there were less
right.
surfaces. We communicated to parents a lot about what we were doing and why.
Yes.
And
So
so
it was
this time,
kind of building that confidence in the parents'
yes,
mind,
yes,
that
mm,
we will do our best, come what may. We will do whatever is
absolutely.
the best as per the situation and as per the, whatever the government decides to protect your children and protect yourself also. I'm sure.
Yes, and that's what we're here for as early childhood educators. We're here because we think children are amazing and competent and capable and beautiful, and that's what we want for children, is for children to feel safe and feel secure, so they are in a position where they can learn and develop. So that's our key goal, whether there's a pandemic or not. And I think parents have certainly understood that. And
Right.
now in this second round of lockdown, it's the opposite. The vast majority of parents are sending their children, and there's only a few people who are self-isolating. That's what's happening in my service.
Right.
And I
Now,
think
now,
that's
now,
because,
I think now they have developed that faith that
mhm,
that even in the preschool or kindergarten their children will be as safe as the child will be at home, because I'm sure you are not, you yourself, all the school educators would also have been briefed about what precautions you have to take. You can't just be socializing, attending parties, birthday parties. I'm sure
yeah,
everybody is being watched, so it's a different time.
yes,
So,
it's
and
against the
I'm
law to have
sure.
a party here at the moment.
Yes, yes, extra conscious. And as educators,
Yeah.
we're actually, because the children are from the same neighborhood, they will know, oh, I saw Lisa attending a party last night. So,
Yes, I do
so
have children who live around the corner, and they would know.
yeah, yeah, there was a loud noise and there are too many cars parked outside her house. Anyway, that's
Yeah, so
that's how.
the parents were concerned and still are concerned, but they do trust us. And I
Yeah,
think there's been a greater appreciation for the work that we do. Certainly after the
right.
first lockdown, when their parents who were home with their preschool children and their school children for days on end, weeks on end, I think they sort of realised that the job that we do is pretty important and not that easy. So we
Not
have
really
experienced a greater level of appreciation from parents too, which is lovely. I do. I'm grateful for
amazing. That's amazing. In fact, yes, a lot of parents do appreciate. Uh,
I think the other thing that parents have realised too is that this really is a partnership. that it's not
Yeah.
about parents just leaving children and going, that as educators and parents and children, we are a partnership, all of us together, and the best outcomes for children, academic outcomes, developmental outcomes, and wellbeing outcomes come when parents and educators work in partnership. And this is a different sort of partnership because it's more about health and safety, but parents are seeing that it is best when we can all work together.
Right. I'll just give a shout out to some of the friends who have joined. So, hi, Manjula ma'am, Aparna ma'am, Sana, Nilofer, and Preeti, and Wow Kids Wonder. I think it's Wonder World, Miss Chatterjee. And hi to Wow Kids Panda, Panjim, a lot of them. So, I think I thought I'll just take this opportunity to say hello to whoever has commented, and I'm sure a lot of people are watching. Anyways, yes, continue. So, that was amazing. I think so. The parents' support, the child care services depend a lot on the parents' support actually. So you got that support, and I believe, I'm sure, never in the history of time we've not communicated as much as we are communicating to the parents now, and
Mhm.
it's their partnership now which is actually helping a lot of preschools and kindergarten to move forward. Otherwise, a lot of them would have actually lost in the race, maybe. So, what are your suggestions on the places where the schools have remained closed for longer? Like, we are on a lockdown since March,
Mhm.
completely closed. So,
Mhm.
were there states in Australia where the schools have been closed from that time for kindergarten, preschools? Have there been states like?
So, of course, school and preschool are different ages. So, a lot of schools did close down, and in Victoria, schools are closed down again. But preschool run by different government bodies, and so it operates differently. So, early childhood, preschools, daycare, childcare, kindergarten, those years before school, they have remained open, but there are certainly lots of families who have chosen to have children at home. There have been some services that have had to close because parents aren't sending children, so of course they don't have the income to operate.
Right.
So there has been quite a period of time when preschool children in Australia have not attended and are not attending. So there's certainly an impact in that regards that children are missing out on a period of time of early education.
So the places, there is one thing that where the parents have a choice. There is one place or state where the government has decided that the school should close down. So were there places where the government had decided that since March the schools will be closed and they never have opened till now? Have there
Mm.
been states?
Have we had that in
Yes, in
Australia?
Australia, maybe. Yeah.
No. So there was an
So,
initial period in March of closing down of
yes.
schools, but then they reopened. And
Right.
Victoria, the state that I'm in, has gone into a second stage of locking down, but they were open for a short period of time in the middle. But overall, across Australia, it's been short periods of students not going to school and young children not going to preschool or kindergarten.
So the purpose is that I'm trying to find out if there are if any of the preschools or kindergarten were required to do online classes.
So, yes, and we did some in the service that I am in.
Okay.
Once again, it depended on what state you were in and what your service was, but I guess I can share what we did in that first lockdown period in March, that first 6 weeks. We did do online classes for children. So when we knew that we were going into that period of not being open or that the majority of children would not be coming, we made packs for the children to take home. So a bag that had some Play-Doh in it and some information for parents and some special things, activities that children could do. So parents took that home. And
Right.
then we had something online for the children every day. So there was story reading or singing songs, what you would call the circle time. We would
Right.
call perhaps group time or a meeting or a mat time,
Right.
where educators were singing or reading or talking to the children. That
So
was
was it?
recorded.
Were you doing live, like on Zoom or something
There was
with the
some
children?
of that, not every day. That was a bit later on that we did schedule some Zoom meetings with children. So I
Sure.
know that I got carried around on an iPad into lots of children's bedrooms and to see their toys because they were very keen for me to see all of the things. Um, but we didn't do whole class Zoom sessions. We just did two or three children at once. So that was a lot of sessions that I did, but we had smaller numbers of children. But if we were to have continued on for a long period, months and months, we would have had to rethink, I suppose, what we were going to be able to continue to offer. But our main goal at that period of time was connection, to stay connected to the children in some way, because we had had that time at the start of the year when we had met the children and everything was normal. And so we had developed those relationships with children. We had knowledge of the children, their skills and their development, and the goals that we had set for those children, the academic goals and developmental and well-being goals. So we knew the children. But when it did move online, our main focus was to stay connected with the children. So we were
Yeah.
thinking, how could we do that? How could the children still feel that they belonged, even though they weren't physically in the building? And how could we support parents to provide some stimulation, cognitive, social, emotional stimulation and experiences for the children, knowing that they were juggling a lot of things in their own home as well?
So, how is it like now? Children are at home and you are not able to meet them. I'm sure the parents must be sending you messages, or children must be missing the school. So, since how long have you been not going to school now?
So for me in Victoria, this second lockdown has in Melbourne has been going, I think, 6 weeks, and in the town that I'm in, which is outside of the capital city, it's only been going for 2 weeks.
Okay.
But of course, that's on top of the one we had previously. It's been very up and down. We've been there, we've been home, we've gone back, we're back at home. So we're just trying to stay connected with the families who are staying at home as best we can, and whether that is Zoom meetings or phone calls. We have an online platform where we can record stories or songs and children can access them off a mobile
Okay.
device.
Yeah.
And we've also put up activities, provocations for the children. So, for example, the first time around in lockdown for me was autumn here. So I went and collected some autumn leaves and took some photographs of autumn leaves and recorded photographs of trees and recorded pictures, a video of me saying, here's the leaves that are in my street. I wonder if you went out for a walk with your family, what leaves could you find? And if you brought them home, could you sort them out from smallest to biggest? Or could you sort them out all the different colours? Or could you
Right.
stick them to some paper and do some drawings around them? So we're trying to offer families activities that they could do with the children that weren't necessarily always on the screen, because I think we do have to be careful about the amount of time children spend on the screen. But then there were also times when we were reading a story to the children, knowing that the parents could happily hand the phone or the computer to the child and let them enjoy that for some time.
Okay. So great. I think wonderful information, friends. We had a great information how schools are continuing and what has been happening in kindergarten or preschools in Australia during the last several months, and it definitely gives us more insight on how schools will reopen. in our country when they open. Maybe after, I don't know what is the when will be the right time, but we will definitely have some information that how they will look like and how the new normal will be in preschools. One last question: is there any changes that you did in the classroom, some partition or some distancing in the seating areas, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
As much.
how many children are there? First of all, how many children are there in each classroom in your kindergarten where you?
In my classroom, there is 20 or 4-year-old children, and in some
Okay.
other classrooms where the children are 4 or 5 years old, there's 22.
Okay.
Um, so you can't keep 23-year-old children apart from each other. They're going to want to play
Yes.
together, and we recognise that, and that the physical distancing or the social distancing is not possible. But
Oh,
what we have done is try to avoid times when the children are all together for a longer period of time. So, what we might have done at the end of every day was bring all the children together on the mat and read a story and sing songs and talk and share. We're not doing that at the moment because we know we're putting them
right.
all together. So,
Yes.
those sort of things we're not doing as much anymore. And when we're setting up a table with an activity, for example, some drawing, where before we may have had 6 children sitting around the table, we've taken away 4 chairs and it's only 2 children, one at either end of the table.
Oh,
And at lunchtime, we're spread across 2 rooms or across all of the room. So we're trying to put distance in where we can, and at times
yes.
when we know the children will be together for longer periods. But we also recognise that children are going to naturally want to be together and need to be together. So we're doing what we can with what we
Yes.
have.
Amazing, Lisa. Thank you so much, and to share your precious thoughts with us and our viewers on Facebook today. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you, Lisa, again for coming on our platform and sharing your views. Okay, stay
It's been
safe
a pleasure.
and
Thank you very much. And perhaps
yes,
we can catch up again close to the time when you're going to be opening. And
yep,
I
definitely.
wish you and
We
your families and your children very, very well. Stay safe.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who has watched us live. Thank you so much. Stay safe until we meet again. Thank you. Bye bye.